everybody, welcome back to the Sewcialites 3 quilt along. Today we're going to stitch up block number 5. It's called the Little Love block, designed by Vanessa Gertsen of Lebo Boutique. We're going to select our fabrics and make this fun heart block. I'm going to be making the 9-inch block today, but the techniques are the same regardless of which size you're going to make. Let's pull some fabric. The first thing I like to do so I don't forget is I cover up the sizes that I'm not cutting. That way I don't make a cutting mistake. And just so you know, at the end of today's video, I'm going to talk a little bit about the final layout and selecting fabrics for those setting rectangles and squares. I'm sewing with two collections from Laundry Basket Quilts, Little Sweetheart and Cloud 9. I've got creams, golds, pinks, and reds. I originally thought I wanted to make the heart pink, and I kind of flipped through and I was looking for a big print because I'm making the 9-inch blocks. I got a chance to select a really big print. And then I went to the reds. Look at this print. This is a nice big print. It's only in the red colorway. It's not in the pink. I'm going to use this to make the heart in this block. The next color I'm going to pick is the background. You can see it's A, B, and C in the photo. I'm going to pull one of the whites or creams for that. Got this nice big print, so I don't want anything that's going to compete with it. I don't want the polka dot. We've used this one before. This is the same print, but in cream. That's not too bad. Too busy. I think that's too busy. This is a very similar print. This is the same print again. We don't want that. We've got the lines, and some of these just seem like they're too dark. Let's go ahead and lay these out, and it'll give you an idea of what it's going to look like when it's next to your fabric for the heart. Now, one of the things about the way this block is made is we've got background on an angle. You can see there's a B and a C and an A. So right away for me, that eliminates this. I don't want to have to worry about matching up any grid lines. That leaves these two. When I look at these two, they both look kind of busy. But if I kind of stand back away from it, the print on this is pretty small. It reads more of a solid. This, you can see the polka dots, they're very defined. So I want to go with this because it's going to be more like a solid. Next we have to pick the F and the E. I'm thinking for F I might want gold. So I'm going to lay the gold right here, and then there's going to be an E in the corner. We can lay everything out and sort of look at it. And as I'm going through and I'm looking at this, I'm thinking this doesn't necessarily have to be pink. I can actually make it red and sort of bring it back to the center. So we'll have the red in the center and then red on the outside corners. Let's grab a red. E is going to be really small. It's going to be a 2-inch square. So anything with a big print, I'm automatically going to set aside. We've got this one here. That's kind of busy. If I put that next to that, there's a lot going on. If I do stripes, I've got to line everything up, and I'm just not into that today. We're not going to do that. We've got a polka dot, and then we've got this really nice dark red. That looks good. It's a very simple design. I think it's going to balance it out and kind of anchor everything. Let's go ahead and get our fabrics cut. These are simple cuts. They're all squares and rectangles. So what I'm going to do is cut them off camera and lay them in place on the design board. And that'll give us a better idea of what this is going to look like when we put our block together. I've got everything cut. It's interesting. I think it's going to be okay. I think once it's all put together, this nice light color is going to frame everything. And we're going to have the red in the corners to anchor it. Before I head over to the machine, I read through the instructions. We're going to need to draw a diagonal line on the wrong side of fabric F squares and a diagonal line on the wrong side of fabric A and fabric C squares. We've done this before, but in case this is the first video you're watching, when I draw the lines on the back of squares, I like to use a line on my cutting mat and line up the corners. It helps me line everything up before I draw that line. And then grab a ruler. There's a nice line here on my ruler, this 45-degree line. It lines up with the edge of my block. I know I've got this straight lined up along this edge, and my line is down the middle. And I'm going to go ahead and draw a line Just like that. I'm going to do that on the back of all of these squares. One thing I'll mention about using the Frixion pen or a Frixion fineliner, technically they're not made for fabric. They do go away when you iron, but if you live somewhere really cold, they can come back and leave what they call a ghost line. It's like a faint white line, so you never want to use it anywhere that might be visible on your quilt. We're going to start by pinning the F fabric, which for me is the brown, right side down on either side of our B fabric. This is my background. When I pin these, I want to make sure the lines are going like this and like that. So they're both pointing up and in. I have to make 4 of these. I've got all 4 of these done. The next thing we want to do is grab our fabric D. We need a couple of fabric C squares, which are the 2-inch squares of our background fabric. So I'm going to grab 2 of those, and we need to place them a little bit differently depending on the side. This is the left-hand side. We're going to want this one this direction with the line going that way, and then this one like that with the line going that way. Think about making the heart. Here's the center and it coming down that way. And then you want to grab your fabric A squares. They're your bigger squares. And on this side, think about the heart coming down. This one's going to lay down like that. By laying it down like this really helps me visualize it and making sure everything is in the right direction. We can't lay the center 2 yet because they're going to overlap with these. So we need to sew those first. And since we're sewing these, you can sew these 2 at the same time. I'm going to go ahead and get these pinned. I'm sewing on a 1955 Singer 221 Featherweight. A quick note about today's video. As I'm editing, I realized I completely forgot to measure each section as we went along. Make sure to check your pattern and measure each section before sewing the pieces together into your block. I do apologize for that. I'm on my 3rd night in a row without very much sleep, taking care of one of our elderly dogs. It's a lot of work, and sometimes sleep just gets put on the back burner. Let's start sewing. My thread color is Aurifil 2000. We're going to sew along all the lines we just drew. Everything is sewn. I can tell by looking at it. I did not get exactly on the lines for most of these. Close, but that's okay. We'll go with it. On these larger pieces, if you want, you can go back to your machine, give yourself 1/2 inch, sew a straight line, and then you'll cut between the 2 lines and you'll end up with a tiny little 1/2 square triangle square. A little bit small for me, so I probably won't do that today, but I do that sometimes when I'm working on projects when they're bigger. We're going to cut a 1/4 inch away. Line up your 1/4 inch line on your ruler, right on the line you just sewed, and you're going to do that for all the corners we just sewed. Once you have everything trimmed, you're going to go to your iron and press. It does show pressing out toward the triangles. If you have a really light colored and really dark colored fabric, you could press toward the dark like that instead. I think for mine, since my red is so dark, I'm going to press these toward the dark. I have everything pressed, and I want to show you this in case yours turn out like this. This one, really nice. Everything lines up really good. This one, you see how this is short right here? I did not do a good job sewing corner to corner. If you turn it over and look, you can see my stitch line is next to the corner, not quite on the corner, and it doesn't look like I lined up my square correctly when I sewed. This side looks pretty good, sewn to the corner, all lined up, but as we go down, the fabric shifted and I didn't sew it corner to corner. I'm not worried about it. It should be within 1/4 inch. Let's look. Yep, here's 1/4 inch line, and I can see my fabric all the way down. So when I go to add the piece that's going to go right here, I can account for that. I've got these pinned. I took a bit of extra time to make sure everything was lined up here and here. Same thing on the inside and the top. Let's go sew these two. These are both sewn. Before you cut your corners, you can always flip it and look. Does it look good? Did you sew it on right? That one looks good. Let's check the next one. That one, it looks like I sewed it a little bit crooked here at the top, but not so much that I want to unpick it and do it again. It'll be fine. I'm going to trim these and press them. I'm going to press to the dark, which is what I did on these, and we'll go to the next step. Got all our pieces. Let's start laying out our block to sew it together. The heart goes in the center, and then pay attention to which way your little corners are going on these pieces. One goes that way, this one goes this way, the one at the top, the one at the bottom. Let's put down the red like that. And then I can look at it, and since they're small squares, I can fuss if I want this leaf to go up. Same thing here. This one, that looks good, and that looks good. How I'm going to assemble, I'm going to put these right sides together, and I'll pin here, and here I have to be careful because I have that space, so I'll make sure to show that to you. And I'll pin that, and this, and this. I've got these pinned and this side pinned. Let's pin this one together, the one that came up short right here. I'm going to put right sides together like that. I'm going to turn it toward me, and I'm lining up with this part right here that I know is correct. So I'm not even looking at this right now. This is nice and straight. So we'll lay this down, make sure I get the corner correct. Line that up, line that up, line that up. And then this is going to continue going straight. I need to make sure that I don't go like that, because then the block will be really crooked. So keep that straight, and you can check and make sure it's straight across the top. We're straight across the bottom. We'll add our pins, and then we can flip it around to the back and have a look at it. I've got the pins added. We have this on nice and straight. You can see it's really straight right here. And when you flip it to the back, you can see here's the part where it's short, and then it starts to go straight again. I want to double check and make sure it's pinned straight. I'm actually going to use the lines on this little cutting mat. I'm going to line it up there along a line, and then the top should be straight. Yep, nice and straight. That looks good. So I need to make sure that that's going to get caught in the seam allowance. I can double check. That's going to be close. It still will fit within 1/4 of an inch. It's very close right here. It's going to be really tight, but it's going to work. For this part, I'm going to change the foot on my machine. Right now I have on the regular presser foot with no guide. We're sewing our 1/4 inch seams, so I'm going to add the presser foot that has the 1/4 inch guide on it. Let's get a look at the one that had that short part to it. Wow, that's really tight. Do you see that? I've got just a little bit of fabric on the other side of that stitch line. What I'm going to do is put this back on the sewing machine. I'm going to start right above there in the red, and I want to run over that stitch line one more time and make sure that that's nice and secure. And I need to make sure I sew that straight because I don't want this coming apart. Let's take a look at that. Still pretty tight, but I've got 2 lines of stitching. Let's go ahead and open that. It's not going anywhere. It's going to be fine. Let's look at how we need to press everything. Here's everything we just sewed. The top pieces are going to press out like that. These are pressing out. These are going to press in toward the heart like that, so that everything will nest. I've got everything pressed. I can tell it's not perfect. I'm okay with that. We're going to take these 2 pieces and we want to put them together. I'm going to take a moment and do my best to try and line up the center here so that when we sew it together it doesn't end up, you know, crooked or crooked. Put that together, check your seams, make sure that they're lining up, and then add a pin to that. Same thing down here at the bottom, trying to match up these. Just do the best you can. These 2 pins are holding it in place. Let's go sew that seam. Let's have a look at that and see how it turned out. Looks pretty good. I don't think I could get that any closer if I tried. That looks good. That looks good. You need to press that. You can press it to one side or the other, or if you want, you can press it open. Generally, I don't press open, but I've got a pretty tiny stitch length going. For this block, I think I am going to press that open because there's a bit of bulk going on here and here. I've got that pressed. Now we're ready to put the block together. Got your center, your top, and your bottom, and I'm looking at this and I can see that this is really, really wavy. I'm going to take a look at this with a ruler. What I want to do is make sure that I've got 1/4 of an inch above my points. I don't know if I'll be able to trim anything or not. I think I'm a little short. Yeah, it's really short on that side. Almost to the point where I may want to have a look at it. You know why it's short? It's this part right here. I'm going to go with it. Let's make a crooked heart today. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to do my best. Now when I look at it, I can line it up along my mat here. This area is good. That's a little short. The middle's good. This is good. Really short here at the end. Here's the piece that I need. You can line it up and keep it straight with the lines on the mat and then add your pins. So I know that that right there is straight, and then these seams are going to nest, so they'll lock into place. Spin it around, check the other side. I can tell that's crooked too, which is okay. If this is your first video of mine that you're watching, I make quilts to be used. I sew for enjoyment. I am not worried about everything being perfect. Most of the time you can catch all this craziness in your seam allowance and it comes out in the end. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm lining it up on a line on my mat. I can see it's good here at the seam and it's good here at this seam. That's really going to help. So what I can do is nest my seams and pin at the seams, and then I can double check everything else. Now I can make sure everything is lined up straight, and I'm actually going to add a pin right at the beginning here, and then we'll add a few more pins, and then we'll head over to the sewing machine. I've got everything sewn, and I can see right away my seam isn't straight, and I found out something interesting, so I'll share that with you. Can you see how crooked that seam is? It goes down and up. When I'm sewing on this machine, this is a Featherweight, it has a very small little bed over here. I'm finding with bigger pieces that as I'm sewing, my hand is going like this and pulling my fabric. I'm used to having a big table next to me, so I'm messing up my seams as I sew because I'm sort of catching it and shifting the fabric. So for both of these, as I look at them, they're both pretty crooked. I'm just going to run another straight seam, 1/4 inch on both sides, and then we'll head over to the table. We'll open it up and see how it turned out. My seams are re-sewn. That did go a lot better. I moved the tripod out of the way and I went ahead and sewed another seam on both sides. Let's have a look. I know it's not going to be perfectly straight, but oh, that's much better. Did really well here. It does look nice and straight. Looks good. I'm going to go ahead and press these. I will show some areas I can actually tell right now. There's a couple spots that are off. Ideally, in your corners, this will look like a continuous line. You can see how this one's slightly lower than this one. Over here, this was that messy side. That really kind of doesn't look good at all, but you know me, I'm just going to leave it. I'm going to go with it. That looks pretty good. And let's look here. That's not bad, doesn't match. Again, when this is in a quilt, the only one I actually notice even just standing here is this one here. That one's pretty bad. So if something like that happens and you don't like it, it's the seam right here that's not matching. I could unpick it and re-sew it. I think I'll just leave it. You know, this goes for another 20 odd weeks. If I decide it bothers me at some point, I'll pick it out and re-sew it. Still warm off the iron. Now this is supposed to be 9.5 inches. I'm going to grab a square ruler. Let's give it a check and see how I did. I think it's going to be short because it's so uneven, I may have to level it off a little bit. 9.5. Oh, I've got some extra. That's great. So I'm looking at the edge of the ruler here. The 9.5 is right here. So I've got plenty here I can trim, and that's the part that's crooked. So if I wanted to pick that out and fix it, I could. I think I'm just going to trim it and go with it and leave it. Because once you trim it, unless I want to make another block, I'm kind of stuck with what I've got. So looking at where the 9.5 is landing here and here, I'm going to try and split the difference for trimming. I'm going to trim that extra. That's better. And then we'll go this way. I'll line up my 9.5 on the side that I just trimmed, and I'll put this down. I've got extra hanging over here. And you can see that side's really short. That's okay. Let's go ahead and check over here. So I'm going to line up 9.5. I can do just a little bit right here. That side's short. And let's do the other side, 9.5. My block's not perfectly straight. As usual, I'm all right with that. We're going to go with that. Let's talk about the final setting in the quilt. I want to show you what I picked out, and we're also going to talk for a minute about wonky blocks, which I've got plenty of. So here's a picture of the final quilt. The measurements for the setting blocks have not been released yet. They're going to be released closer to the end of the quilt along. If you're not a member of the Sewcialites Facebook group, you may not have seen that. I'll link that below. But our setting blocks are these rectangles and squares. One thing that's really good about these setting blocks is they're spread evenly throughout the quilt. And this is part of the reason why I'm not too worried about my wonky blocks. If I can manage to get all of these nice and square, when I go to put my wonky blocks in the quilt, it'll be easy to measure and figure out where are things short, because as you're putting stuff together to sew, let's pretend this is two separate blocks. So as you're putting things together to sew, it'll be easy to see stuff like this. See, this is lined up real nice. This is short, not too bad up here. So if I've got all my little blocks, and a lot of them are coming up short or a little crooked, but then I'm going to line up the nice square and rectangles all around the blocks. You can see how these setting blocks sort of surround each of our pieced blocks. It's really going to help make the quilt square. So I would say if this is your first quilt along, if you're a beginning quilter, if things are a little crooked, please don't worry about it. It's going to be fine. Now I made a fabric selection for these. On this guide, there are some measurements. You've got your 3, 6, and 9 blocks, and it tells you setting print 1 yard. Since we don't have exact measurements yet, I wanted to make sure I was going to have plenty of fabric. And because all the blocks I'm making so far have no solid background, everything has a printed background, I thought it would be a good idea to make these setting blocks solid, but I didn't want them super solid, if that makes sense. So I went on Fat Quarter Shop's website, and I was surprised they still had this. Are you ready? I'm so excited. This is the Little Sweetheart Laundry Basket Favorites Half Yard Bundle. It's a half yard of all the nice colors, and can you see the texture on that? Let's go ahead and open it. In the half yard bundle, you get a half yard of each of the fabrics that's included. This gives me a really good selection of kind of what would be a traditional background, a lighter color. Got a medium brown, the darker golden brown. There's another one that's even more gold. This is darker than this one. The pink, dark pink, and red. Let's grab the block we sewed today and lay some of these around it. Here's our heart block. So getting these solids, it's going to give my eye somewhere to rest. There's so much movement in what I'm using for backgrounds right now. I think having the solid with this little bit of texture is going to look really nice. And I don't have to surround it all with the beige. I can have some blocks where maybe I put the red next to it or the pinks next to it. It's going to look really nice. I was so glad to find these. I'll have to spray starch these, dry them and press them and get them ready. But we've got a ways to go in this quilt along. Let's look at next week's block. These are the blocks we've done so far. We just completed block 5. Block 6 next week has a square and a square in the center. If you've never made one of those before, we'll learn that technique. It's just a square with half square triangles on the corner. Thank you so much for joining me again for the Sewcialites 3 quilt along. Today was block number 5. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Comments or questions, please leave them below for me. I'd love to know how your blocks turned out. I'll also have my Facebook group linked below if you'd like to share your blocks. I'll be back next week for block number 6. See you next time.